Are NFL teams sending a wrong message by drafting players with these transgressions?
I think they are, but this argument always comes down, this issue always comes down to two competing forces. On the one hand, you'd like the players involved in this business, the people involved in this business, to not engage in that kind of repugnant criminal behavior, right? And not just domestic violence, although that's certainly a major issue that's unfortunately not been dealt with to the extent that it needs to be, but all kinds of behavior. I mean, forget about reaching the kind of highest standards, just conforming to standards of basic human decency. That would be a good idea for the NFL. So there's that idea on the one hand, that force on the one hand. And on the other hand, there's the idea that, look, even if someone engages in that kind of criminal behavior, the lowest kind of behavior, even so, eventually, if they've paid their debt, are they allowed to ply their trade at the highest level? After all, this is something they've devoted their entire life to. Has it disqualified them forever plying their trade at the highest level? So I think, Stephen A., what I would propose, and it doesn't take that much thought. You know, the NFL has a program where if you're in a drug violation, you enter the league on probation, right? So you get to play in the league, but there's less tolerance for you slipping up than there might be for someone else. You start on probation. I think there are steps the NFL can take, like, for example, oh, wait a minute, there's this issue coming into the league. Well, basically, your behavior along those lines now needs to be perfect. There will be no second chances because this is the second chance. And that, I think, might strike some kind of a compromise that people who are animated by both sides of that divide could live with. I'd like to see that happen because as it stands now, I think the answer is no. The NFL is not showing enough sensitivity to this issue.
Stephen A., I just want to add one thing really quickly to piggyback off that. I love what you proposed and maybe adding some rehab to that as well, that these players have to go through to rehabilitate themselves while trying to play in the NFL.
Molly, it's very, very important that I hear from you on this particular subject, particularly with what I'm about to say, because I think it's very, very important. We live in the United States of America. One of the biggest things we lean on is innocence until proven guilty. And Nancy Amore, writing a great column that she wrote in today's USA Today, said a couple of things that I think need to be pointed out, because at some point in time, we have to make up our minds what we want our system of justice to entail. That seems to be something that we're trying to wiggle our way through on far too many occasions, which is why you have so many people who have issues with this. To be clear, if you hit a woman, you're Joe Mixon, as far as I'm concerned, you need to pay a hefty price. As far as I'm concerned, being suspended for the year ain't good enough, even though he was 18 years of age, and people talk about 18 years of age makes mistakes. I'm 49, I never hit a woman in my life, never would. And I know plenty of people who are just like me, okay, who have sisters and mothers and girlfriends and all of this other stuff that we've had in terms of women in our lives, nieces and beyond, daughters, etc. You put your hands on a woman as a man, you a new kind of punk and you need to be dealt with. That's clear. Having said all of that, we seem to live in a society today where the mere accusation is enough to convict you in the court of public opinion. And we seem to have a lot of people who have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. And what I'm here to say is, that's not the American way. That's not the America I know. Now, we might be talking about a system of justice as opposed to a system of public opinion. That we might be talking about it on that level. But the fact remains that you're Joe Mixon. There's a video. We know you were guilty. You Caleb Brantley and supposedly knocked a woman unconscious. That needs to be investigated and all of this other stuff. All of those things. You've got 15 individuals over the past 2 years that have been arrested for some form of assault, whether it's domestic violence or beyond. Are we willing to acknowledge that there are cases where people are falsely accused? Because to me, I think a heavy hand needs to be brought down upon individuals who are guilty. What we're not addressing is those who may be innocent.
That's fair.
And what we're leaning on is the fact that a vast majority of these cases, you find folks getting off, paying a lesser penalty than they normally could because that proverbial ceiling is there where all of a sudden, you know, with people who commit domestic violence are getting away with it, or abuse, they're getting away with something. I understand that because 85% of the time, the numbers show that women are the victims, not men. And we know that there are a lot of cases where women who rightly try to bring folks to justice are not successful in doing so. I get all of that, but I don't hear enough about how a vast majority of men have never nor would ever put their hands on a woman. I don't hear enough about how if a man is walking down the street and he sees a woman being assaulted, he will step in and usually intervene. Most men I know would put themselves on the line to protect a woman. And I don't hear enough about that. I hear about men who have committed these crimes, and I'm sort of being given the impression that most of us aren't interested in doing something about that. And I find that to be false, because I think any man with any woman in his life would step forward and not allow something like this to happen to any woman if he has a core decency about that. Max, Molly, have I said anything that's out of turn?